So in today's video, we're going to do a project that's based from my son, a lowrider skateboard. Have you heard of one of these? I didn't until now. Let's get started. So to start off with, he's just taking and using a little screwdriver to get started on the grip tape, and he's just peeling it up in big chunks. Now he's going to take and sand the board, give it a nice finish so that way he can put some paint on it. This is a waterlogged board and it doesn't have any pop. If you skate, you'll know what that means. So now I'm going to make a jig so that way I can cut some supports for the tires, specifically for the trucks, but I'm just going to make a simple 90-degree jig that will hold the hacksaw blade a little more consistently. So I'm going to notch this out like I'm making a dado. That seems to be a pretty good snug fit. Right here I'm just using a scrap piece of acrylic because of the fact I know the corner of it is 90 degrees, and I'm just using some reclaimed wood here. So I'm sandwiching a hacksaw blade in between to give it the right thickness, and I'm just going to attach another piece of reclaimed wood on the other side. And that's going to be the guide for the hacksaw blade to keep it 90 degrees from the square tube steel that I bought. Afterwards I decided to take and trim off all the extra bits, make it a little easier to handle. This could all be done with some very simple tools. You don't really need a table saw for this. So I'm going to clamp this down to the table, and then I'm going to hacksaw further down so that way it's cut through the wood all the way through where the tube steel would be. Now I made a mark so that way I can make some repeatable cuts, and we're just going to sneak it up to that mark and then we'll cut it out. So I'm tracing out a rollerblade wheel here, and that's because it's a little bit bigger than what we're going to have in the final product in order to have some clearance. And I'm going to trace this out, fold it in half, and that's going to give me a template I can use for measuring, so I don't have to use calipers or a tape measure. I can just simply fold this up and that'll give me a center point right there. Now I put a mark on each side, and I will put a little bit of a bigger mark a little bit later in the video. So I'm using a simple piece of paper as a square here. So now I marked out where the axle is going to be and the area we're going to cut out for the tire. And just simply cut that out with a jigsaw. So now we're going to sand all these edges and get them rounded over. That's going to give it a little bit of a cleaner look. Now my son picked chrome for us to paint all of the parts in and all the square tubing. The parts in the bottom there are called trucks. So if I mention it later, that way you guys know. So now with it painted up, we're actually going to take and countersink these holes a little bit better because of the fact the new screws we have that are going in are a little bit more heavy duty. They're a little bit beefier. So now we're just test fitting to see if all the parts are going to fit on correctly and see if there's anything else that we need to do to modify it. So these screws are 3.5 inches long, and if you can get the concept, we're putting the truck on top of the skateboard instead, and we're using the square tubing as spacers to hold it to the deck. The deck being the wood part of the board. So my son wanted to put on a checker pattern, so we used some painter's tape and just cut out a bunch of checkers, and then he painted it up. Now once that's done, he's obviously going to remove the painter's tape, revealing the pattern. He was pretty dedicated on this project. It was really nice to see him so involved and creative. In the middle of this build, he wanted to switch out some of the parts we were using and get different trucks, and the kid that he had got them from had stripped out the nuts, and they're kind of specific, so we needed to take and make them thinner. So how I'm going to do that is I'm cutting off the head to a bolt, and I got that in my drill press, and I got 3 of the nuts that I'm going to be cutting down to size on there, and I'm just going to hold a hacksaw file against it. So I noticed the square tubing spacers were digging into the wood pretty hard, so we decided that we were going to make some support pieces to stop that from happening, and we're just using some flat steel for that. I'm going to take and drill one side out, and then I've stuck a screw through it, and I'm using the skateboard as a jig. With that, we can cut the first one off, and then just use this one as a template. So here's a little time lapse of Cannon putting it all together. Now after inserting the washers, he's got the flat steel on the wood to protect it, and then he's using the square tubing as the spacers. Now he puts the trucks on, and he tightens it all down. With a rinse and repeat for the other side, this skateboard's done. So I have to say, I think this thing turned out pretty dang cool. So here's a little bit of footage of him just skating around having fun. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little journey with me. Make sure to hit the like, notification bell. We'll see you next time.